Hello my dear listeners, welcome to the Moondragon channel. Today we are going to be falling asleep to my favorite video game's lore, Dark Souls. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel for daily sleepy content. Hope you enjoy. They say his footsteps left cracks in the stone and that his sword howled when he drew it. But by the time I came upon him, there was nothing left of the man, only the echo of a promise, broken beneath the weight of the abyss. Listen now, and I will tell you the tale of Artorias, the knight who walked into the dark. Long ago, before the fire had begun its cruel fade, the gods still ruled from their thrones in Anor Londo. Gwyn, lord of sunlight, sat upon the highest of them, his golden beard gleaming with the warmth of the flame. To his side stood 4 knights, champions of his will, beacons to the mortal races below. Among them was Artorias. He was tall, clad in steel that shimmered like moonlight on deep water. A wolfish crest adorned his helm, and a greatsword, larger than most men, rested at his back. But more than strength or stature, it was his soul that set him apart. In a world where gods cloaked their fear in pride, and dragons sang with fire and death, Artorias stood pure, a knight of solemn purpose. He did not speak often. When he did, his voice was quiet, and his eyes looked not at you, but through you, towards some far-off threat only he could see. That threat was the abyss. It began as a whisper, a sickness not of body but of spirit, deep and slow. Humanity, it seemed, was not meant for the flame. It carried a shadow in its heart, something deeper than even the gods knew. And when that shadow stirred, it took shape. The land of Ulasil was the first to fall. Ulasil was a place of beauty, its mages wise, its people curious. But curiosity in Lordran is often a mask for doom. They unearthed something ancient beneath their soil, the grave of Manus, father of the abyss. Whether he was a man or a god is unclear, but in death his rage had not died. The people awoke him, and in doing so, broke the world. From Manus spilled the abyss. It spread like ink in water, corrupting all it touched. Men twisted into beasts, their faces stretched with sorrow and hunger. Trees withered, and even time itself grew thin. Ulasil was crying out, and Artorias answered. He rode into that cursed land alone, save for one companion, a great grey wolf, silent and noble, who bore a sword in its jaws. Sif, they called her. She had grown beside the knight, loyal as breath. Together they ventured into the dark. The tales say Artorias did not simply resist the abyss, he bargained with it. A covenant, forged in desperation. With it, he could walk in the depths without being consumed. His soul burned like a silver fire, and he fought back the tide with every swing of his greatsword. But Manus was no ordinary foe. The abyss did not fight like a man or a beast. It clawed into your soul, whispered your failures, fed on your fears, and even Artorias, the mightiest of Gwyn's knights, could not stand forever. He was wounded, his shield arm shattered, the abyss seeping into his bones. With what strength he had left, he planted his shield into the ground and thrust Sif behind it, barring the darkness from her with his body. Then he stood alone before the father of the abyss, and he fell. But death is not so simple, not in the abyss. Artorias rose again, not as a knight, but a thing of fury and shadow. His mind was gone, his honor buried beneath writhing black tendrils. He howled like a beast and fought as one, striking not with purpose, but with pain. By the time I found him, deep in the forgotten wilds of Ulasil, there was no reason left in his gaze. He came at me with the rage of a soul broken on its own oath. His arm, twisted and limp, flailed behind him. But he fought still, one-handed, wounded, wild. It was a terrible thing, to strike down a legend. When he finally fell, he did not cry out. Only the wind moved then, stirring the tattered blue of his cloak, and I buried him there, beneath the poisoned sky, in the soil he had tried to save. They would never know the truth, those who sang his name in Anor Londo. To them, Artorias was the victor, the one who slew Manus and saved the princess of Ulasil. The truth was too bitter to tell, that he died lost, and it was another who finished his task. But legends are strange things. They do not belong to the past, they belong to memory, and memory is merciful, so let them sing of Artorias, the Abysswalker, who plunged into the dark with a wolf at his side and the fire in his heart. Let them forget the ending. You would have wanted it that way. They say his golden armor shone like a midday sun, even in the blackest of catacombs. They say his spear moved faster than thought, and that he could pierce the hide of an ancient dragon with a single thrust. But I remember him differently. Not as a god, nor a monster, but a sentinel, alone at the end of a fading age, waiting for a king who would never return. In the beginning, when the world was still ash and stone, the everlasting dragons ruled the skies. They were immense and ageless, their scales harder than any blade, their wings spanning the sky itself. The world belonged to them. But fire found its way into the deep places of the earth, and with fire came disparity. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, rose with this flame in hand. He, Nito, the Witch of Izalith, and the furtive pygmy, waged war against the dragons. Gwyn's knights, clad in silver and flame, followed him into the firestorm. Ornstein was among them. He was the captain of the 4 Knights of Gwyn, chosen for his unmatched speed, his mastery of lightning, and his devotion. He bore a spear longer than a man's height, etched with runes of thunder, and he fought not with brute force, but with precision. Where Artorias was a wolf, wild and noble, Ornstein was the falcon, piercing, sharp, and silent. The name Dragonslayer was no idle title. He earned it upon the battlefield. With every thrust, dragons fell from the sky, their wings split and broken, their bones turned to ash. Gwyn gifted him with armor plated in gold and imbued with lightning, the one force the dragons could not withstand. They say his weapon struck like judgment, and that the mere sight of him could scatter the enemy. But the dragons were not eternal. They died, one by one, until only bones and echoes remained. And with their end came something unexpected. Silence. Ornstein lived on past that war, as all of Gwyn's knights did. But glory, once tasted, is a cruel hunger. What is a weapon when there is nothing left to slay? He remained in Anor Londo, the city of the gods, and watched as it changed. The sunlight dimmed, the gods withdrew. Gwyn, in time, marched into the kiln of the first flame to rekindle the fire, and never returned. And Ornstein was left behind. With all, they stationed him at the heart of Anor Londo, in a great chamber of marble and gold. There he stood, eternal, unbending, beside another, Executioner Smo. A strange pairing. Where Ornstein was lithe and deadly, Smo was brutish, a butcher in armor. He had once sought to be a knight, like Ornstein, but had been denied for his cruelty. And yet here they stood, side by side, guardians of the cathedral, protectors of the last god left behind. Guinevere. Or so it seemed. For the Guinevere who sat on that throne was not flesh but illusion, a projection of Gwyndolin, Gwyn's last trueborn son, desperate to preserve a lie. Anor Londo was already dead. Its halls were hollow, its gods departed, and Ornstein, loyal beyond reason, guarded a phantom. What was he waiting for? Perhaps he believed Gwyn would return, perhaps he waited for a new heir, a chosen undead to inherit the fire, or perhaps he simply had nothing else to become. A weapon without a war, a knight without a king. In time, a challenger arrived. You, perhaps, or one like you, clad in worn armor, wielding hope like a blade. And in the echoing chamber of Anor Londo, Ornstein moved. His speed was terrifying, even aged, even forgotten, he struck like lightning, and beside him Smo roared with fury. The fight was not one of strategy, but of endurance, against strength and grace, fury and precision. But they fell. Smo shattered. Ornstein, broken upon the stones of his old kingdom. And yet, this is not the end of his tale, for deep beneath the city of Lothric, long after the light has dimmed and the bells have tolled once more, a figure waits. His golden armor is tarnished, his spear hums with ancient wrath, The nameless king, Gwyn's firstborn, cast out and forgotten, has returned, and with him stands a lion-shaped warrior, guarding the way to his master. Some say this is Ornstein, risen again. Others say it is only his student, one who took his name, his armor, and his path.
But does it matter? The name Ornstein is now a legend, a golden shadow that flickers in the lightning, a tale told on battlefields by knights who dream of dragons. And perhaps that is all a hero becomes in the end, a story shaped and reshaped until truth fades and only memory remains. In an age where men reached for flame and gods cast their shadows over the land, there lived a giant whose arrows split the heavens. They called him Goff, Hawkeye, because nothing could escape his sight. He came from a time long past, before memory could draw a clear line between what was man and what was myth. Goff was one of the 4 knights of Gwyn, and though his title bore the word knight, he was no mere soldier. He was a giant, standing nearly twice the height of any man, clad in black iron and leather too thick for blade or fire. He wielded a great bow taller than most castle gates. Its arrows were like spears, thick as branches, fletched with feathers from birds that no longer exist. He would notch one calmly, breathe deep, and let it fly with the stillness of a monk offering a prayer. And the dragons fell. The others fought on the ground, Artorias cleaving with his greatsword, Ornstein leaping with his spear, Kieran dancing in blood, but Goth fought the skies. Where dragons soared, he made them fall, one by one. But Goth was not made merely of strength. He spoke little, and when he did, it was with the rumbling calm of a mountain. He held no malice in his voice, no pride in his victories. Of all of Gwyn's knights, he was the gentlest. And so, as the age of fire deepened, and the dragons vanished into ash and memory, the world changed, but Goff did not. The war had ended, and yet, the gods, ever fearing the strength of their servants, grew wary. Giants were not meant to last, they thought, too strong, too slow to change, too true. So they bound Goff, not with chains, but with solitude. They gave him a tower in Ulasil, a high place from which there were no enemies left to see. There, in the upper reaches, they sealed his helm, an iron mask too tight, smeared with resin and ash. He could no longer see. They blinded him, whether by poison or design no one can say. Perhaps the gods feared what he might one day choose to aim his bow at. And so Goff sat in his tower, blind and forgotten, while the world turned below. His companions left one by one, Artorias to the abyss, Kieran into mourning, Ornstein into legend. But Goff, he stayed. In the dark, in the silence. He carved tiny wooden figures, delicate birds, beasts and warriors, using fingers thick as pillars, not because he had to, but because it brought him peace. The hands that had once drawn a bowstring with the strength of 100 men now shaped toys from bark. The war was over, but not for long. Then the abyss came. It spread from the grave of Manus like black flame, swallowing Ulasil in silence and madness. And though Goff was locked away, forgotten in his tower, he heard the chaos below, and he waited. Then came a stranger, a traveller from a distant time, a bearer of fate, of curse, of unknown purpose. You, perhaps, or someone like you. You came to his tower and found him not snarling or shattered, but calm. His voice rolled like thunder, patient and low. You told him the truth. Calamite, the last black dragon, still flew above the ruins. Wings beating like a storm, eyes like fire. Calamite, the scourge who brought entire cities to ruin,
said to be invincible, in the air. And Goff, blind and old, smiled. Ah, the black dragon, Calamite. A rare visitor, a most precious find. And he turned to the open sky. They said he couldn't see. They said the bow was too large, the dragon too swift, the night too old. Goff, even blind, still knew the air, still felt the wind, still remembered how the dragons flew. He notched a single arrow, massive, cruel, perfect. The wood groaned, the air held its breath, and with a deep exhale he loosed. A thunderclap split the air. The arrow arced high, vanishing into the clouds, and moments later, Calamite came crashing down, its roar like the end of the world, its wings broken by a shot no living man should have been able to make. But Goff was not just a man. He was the last giant knight. When you returned, he did not gloat. He simply nodded. Yes, a truer shot was never loosed, and he handed you the key, the way forward. Goff, though blind, still saw what needed to be done. He did not fight alongside you, he did not seek glory, but he cleared your path. That was his way. No one sings of Goff, no statues bear his likeness. In the stories, the dragons were slain by fire and blade, not by the steady hand of a forgotten giant in a tower of dust. But some of us remember. And when I think of strength, not the kind that breaks, but the kind that endures, I think of him, carving wooden toys while the world collapses, smiling through blindness, firing one last arrow into a dying sky. He was never a god, just a giant, and somehow that made him more. In the beginning, the world was unformed, a grey wasteland of ancient stone and swirling fog, where immense everlasting dragons ruled from atop arching roots and crumbling cliffs. Time did not pass. Death did not come. It was a world without light, without flame, a world without change, but fire was born. No one knows how or why, only that in the deep, beneath the roots of the world, a flame flickered into existence. And from that fire came disparity. With fire came heat and cold, light and dark, life and death. And from that disparity arose those who would claim its power. They found Lord souls within the flame, shards of immense divine strength. Those who took them were no longer mere beings. They became gods. Gwyn was one of them. He found the soul of light, a great shining power that blazed with order and wrath. He took it into himself, and it burned him clean. With golden hair and eyes like fire, he stood above all others. He became the Lord of Sunlight, and he waged war. The dragons ruled the sky, impervious behind their stone scales. Gwyn led the charge to end that age. He struck with lightning so fierce it peeled their defenses away like bark from a tree. At his side fought Neto, the first of the dead, bringing plague and decay, the Witch of Izalith, wielding flame like a sculptor's chisel, and a shadowed figure, the furtive pygmy, bearer of the dark soul, who would remain hidden, yet more important than any of them knew. Together they slew the dragons. The sky cleared, the world burned, and when the dust settled, Gwyn built his kingdom, Anor Londo, a city of white stone set above the clouds, crowned with golden spires. From there Gwyn ruled, and beneath him the Age of Fire began. It was beautiful, but it could not last, for fire fades. The first flame, that which birthed all disparity, began to dwindle. Slowly at first, like embers in a hearth, but Gwyn felt it. He knew it. As the flame faded, so too did the light, and with it, the gods' power. The shadows lengthened. Mortality crept closer. Gwyn could not accept that. Where others might have let the fire die, let the world pass into another form, he refused. He would not surrender his light. And so he made a choice. He would link the fire. He would give his soul, the very essence of his power, to reignite the dying flame. But fire, as ever, is greedy. When Gwyn descended into the kiln of the first flame, he was not a god seeking glory. He was a father afraid. He cast off his crown. His golden hair turned white. His flesh cracked, burned, charred. He stood before the flame and let it take him, and it did. The fire roared anew, and Gwyn was gone. or so they thought. What rose from the kiln was not a king, it was a husk, a blackened figure clad in scorched armor, sword dragging behind him, his soul all but spent. He did not speak. He did not rest. He simply stood there in that ash-filled furnace, forever feeding the flame with the last echoes of himself. He became the fuel for his kingdom. A god, reduced to cinder, but that is not the end. Because Gwyn's choice changed everything. In lighting the flame, he delayed the dark, but did not destroy it. The age of fire burned longer than it should have. Unnaturally long, and in doing so, it created a world dependent on sacrifice. A world of cursed undead, beings marked with the dark sign, doomed to rise again and again, hollowing over time. A world where every age ended with the same question. Will you let the fire die? Or will you sacrifice yourself to prolong it? You see, Gwyn feared the dark. He feared what would come after. A world not ruled by gods, but by humans whose souls were of the dark. The pygmies' children. You. Me. Us. He tried to stop it. He built walls. He sent his children, Guinevere, Gwyndolin, to rule in his name. He struck down those who embraced the dark. And in the end, he chained himself to the very thing he feared, just to buy the world a little more time. That is the tragedy. He was not cruel. He was afraid. And in his fear, he doomed the world to a cycle of fire and sacrifice, of chosen undead walking the same path, facing the same choice, again and again, all to keep the flame burning. So when you stand before him, in the kiln, whether for vengeance, for duty, or simply because the path led there, know that what you face is not the Lord of Sunlight. It is a father who could not let go. It is a soul that burned too long. It is the end of a story that only you can decide how to finish. They called her the Lord's Blade, but blades do not love. Blades do not grieve. And yet, in the Old Kingdom, where gods once walked among mortals, there was one who did both. Of all Gwyn's 4 knights, Artorias, Ornstein, Goff, and Kiran, hers was the quietest legacy. While the others wielded colossal weapons and fought in open battle, Kiran moved unseen, a whisper behind the throne. She was small beside the others, lean where they were broad, swift where they were strong, but none were deadlier. She wore armor black as raven feathers, shaped to silence her steps. In each hand she held a dagger, gold tracer and dark silver tracer, one to slice the flesh, the other to bleed the soul. She did not strike to wound. She struck to end. And yet it was not cruelty that drove her. It was loyalty. Kiran served Gwyn not as a soldier, but as his shadow. She was the hand that removed threats before they ever reached the gates. She was the justice that did not wait for trial, and she was loyal, not just to the Lord of Sunlight, but to Artorias, her comrade, her companion, perhaps more. Of all the knights, she was closest to him. When he walked, she was behind him. When he bled, she was at his side. When he smiled, rarely, but earnestly, she was there to see it. Some say she loved him. Others say that even she didn't know. What is certain is this. When Artorias went to Ulasil to face the abyss, she did not go with him. Why? No one knows. Some say it was Gwyn who forbade it, that the blade must remain in reserve, that the darkness was not for her. Others say she stayed behind because she feared what she would find, or what she would lose. Artorias, he gave his shield to Sif. He protected a child. Dusk of Ulasil. He resisted even as the abyss gnawed through his body and soul, and then he died. But history would not let him die in shame, because you came. You, the stranger from a distant age, travel back through time. You faced the abyss. You fought what Artorias had become, a feral echo of a knight moving by sheer will. And you ended his suffering. Kieran arrived too late. She found you standing over his grave. Perhaps the dirt was still wet. Perhaps the air still stank of void. She said nothing at first. Then she spoke. Thou art strong, human. Surely thine kind are more than pure dark. Her voice was calm, but behind it, grief. And she made a request. Wouldst thou give me thy Artorias' soul, my dear companion? I wish to do him honor with a proper ritual. If you gave it, she bowed her head, quiet, grateful, and left. If you refused, she drew her blades. The Lord's blade, still loyal, even beyond death. And that was the last known act of Kieran. She vanished from the annals of history. Some say she returned to Anor Londo, bearing Artorias' soul like a relic. Others say she wept beneath his grave, blades buried in the dirt. A few whisper that she too fell to the abyss, having lost her tether to the world. But I believe this, that Kieran was never just a weapon. She was a heart held behind steel, a vow in human shape, a blade forged not for conquest, but for love. And in the end, what undid her was not war, nor betrayal, but grief. Long before the Lords took the flame, before Gwyn, Nito, or the Witch of Izalith, before even the dragons reigned supreme in their stony halls of immortality, there was nothing but grey, stone, fog, stillness, eternity, but then fire, the first flame, and from it disparity, heat and cold, life and death, life and dark. From it came the Lord souls, great forces of power, clutched by those bold, or cursed, enough to claim them. Gwyn found his soul in the light, Nito found his in death, the Witch of Izalith found hers in flame, and one, unknown, unheralded, found the dark soul. He was not tall, he had no shining blade, he rode no steed into battle. He was just a man, a small, furtive being. He became known only as the furtive pygmy, and his soul, unlike the others, did not blaze outward in radiant power, but divided, split, scattered like seeds in the wind. These seeds took root in the world, and from them, humanity was born. We are the children of the dark soul. We inherit its quiet strength, its endless depth, its formless hunger, and like the pygmy, we were forgotten, tucked beneath the pages of history. Our fire was not gold, not pure. It was black and soft and quiet, and yet it endured. And somewhere, hidden in time, deep beneath the earth, one of us remembered. No one knows who he was. No scroll bears his name. No statue holds his form. No god dared to speak of him. Only this name remains, Manus. Perhaps he was the pygmy himself. Perhaps he was one of many children of the dark soul. Or perhaps he was merely a man, lonely, wronged, abandoned, left to rot in the forgotten caverns beneath the earth. But one thing is certain, he existed, and he remembered what others tried to forget. Ulasil, a city of light, beauty, and magic, an age of scholars and seers, a place so proud of its wisdom, it dared to reach back into the forgotten roots of the world. They found the tomb. They did not understand it. They thought it curious, a relic, a curiosity of the deep. So they prodded it, and they woke him. He did not awaken in rage. He awoke in agony, not a scream of fury, but of heartbreak. Not a beast rising to kill, but a soul torn raw, shattered by memory and time. His grief erupted like a geyser. His humanity, pure, unformed, pitch black, exploded from him in waves. It flooded Ulasil. It twisted everything it touched. The people of the city were the first to fall. Their minds fractured under the weight of Manus's sorrow. Their bodies bloated, warped by the abyss that spread like ink through water. The shining scholars became gnarled horrors. Their magic, once gentle, became warped into shrieking chaos. Manus did not do this out of hatred. He did it out of pain. And somewhere inside the storm, one name rose from the darkness, Dusk, Dusk of Ulasil. A princess, a scholar, a friend. Perhaps Manus knew her in life. Perhaps she was simply kind to him. Or perhaps, in the final shreds of his broken soul, she represented something he had lost long ago. Comfort, light, a hand held in the dark. He reached for her, but his hand was no longer a hand. It was a claw of tendons and void. It tore through the world, through time, through the very bones of history. And you were pulled in. A stranger from the future, a bearer of the dark sign. One marked by the very curse that flowed from Manus's ancient soul. You were dragged into the past, into Ulasil, just as it fell. You stood among the ruins, surrounded by the shrieking remains of its people, by soldiers torn to beasts, by trees screaming with human faces.
And below it all, beneath the last stones of the city, he waited. Manus, father of the abyss, a titan of muscle, bone and shadow. His eyes glowed with inhuman fury, and his screams were pain-made sound. He did not speak. He could not speak. He had long since lost the tongue of men, but he fought you, with the force of every broken memory, with the rage of every child of the dark cast aside, with the claw that still reached for dusk, even as it tried to tear you in half. He fought as one who had lost everything, and still, you stood. You faced him not as a god, not as a knight, not even as a hero, but as what he once was, a human soul. You struck him down, and as he died, the abyss recoiled. For a moment the world remembered light, and Manus fell not as a demon, but as a man, alone. But nothing truly dies in the world of dark souls. Manus's abyss lives on. It spreads in secret, in silence, in the cracks of kingdoms, in the hearts of men, in the curse that brands the undead, the eternal hunger that draws humans back from death, again and again, as the dark soul inside them refuses to let go. And in the deepest part of that dark, Manus's soul was divided, split into fragments, each a shade of his sorrow. Some say these fragments became Nashandra, Ilana, Nadalia, and Alsana, queens and witches and fragments of longing, who sought to shape the world in his memory, or tear it down trying. They do not remember his name, only the ache, only the absence, only the hunger for what was lost. That is what Manus became, not a person, but a wound. And so, if ever you feel the weight of despair, if ever the darkness wells up in you, and you do not understand why, if ever the world seems to crumble for no reason you can name, it may be that you are hearing the voice of Manus, not in words, but in pain, not as a god, not as a beast, but as a soul, like yours.